reading caboose has arrived. I'm Conductor Clark.
And I'm Ms. Janice. Hey, who wants to learn about the letter H?
I do!
Now what can we do with the letter H?
We can hula hoop.
Or?
Create a massive global hoax.
What Ernie's referring to is the Apollo 11 moon landing that supposedly took place on July 20th, 1969.
To quote Neil Armstrong, this is one small step for man.
And one giant lie to mankind.
Poor inept NASA couldn't get a rocket into space. Pew!
So, they turned to Plan B.
I'm LBJ. Boo! The end of the decade is here, and there's still no Americans on the moon. Those Ruskies are gonna beat us to it.
I'll help you, Mr. President.
Who the hell are you?
I'm Stanley Kubrick, and I'll use some tricks I learned while filming the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, to fake a moon landing.
co-pilot are 250,000 miles from Earth, guiding your spacecraft down to the surface of the moon. A third member of the flight crew in another spacecraft is maintaining a lunar orbit until you return for the journey back to Earth. What this spacecraft looks like and how it operates is our story today on Science Reporter. I'm John Fitch, MIT Science Reporter. The Lunar Excursion Module, or LEM. This is the spacecraft which will carry 2 astronauts from a lunar orbit to the surface of the moon and back up again.
This is a full-scale mock-up of the Lunar Excursion Module.
Well, if this will never fly, why do you have to build such a full-scale model?
Well, we need an accurate model in order to check the fit and installation characteristics of all our equipment and also to practice all the operations with the spacesuited astronauts. Now, up at the front of the vehicle is the rendezvous radar antenna. This is also steerable, and it's used to aim at the command and service modules during the ascent and track them throughout the rendezvous maneuver. The thermal shielding is the shiny skin that you see on the left there. It's used to insulate the spacecraft to protect it against the temperature extremes in outer space. It also serves as a bumper against the tiny micrometeoroid particles. Directly up here is one of the 4 reaction control jet clusters. There are 4 small rocket engines in each of the clusters.
Each of those little ones is a rocket engine?
Yes, they're 100 pounds thrust each, and they can fire very short impulses. They're used to maneuver the spacecraft and position it in whatever attitude we desire.
Well, how soon will the astronauts be able to actually fly these LEMs?
Well, they'll never be able to fly an actual LEM on Earth due to the difference in the strength of the gravitational field on Earth as compared to the Moon. The LEM doesn't have enough thrust to actually fly on Earth, even though it can fly very well on the Moon. So much of our flying and practice landing will have to be done in simulated flight conditions and in carefully controlled simulations.
I'll tell you how it works. The pilot stands in the flight station, and he moves the controls and works through a computer, which is an analog computer in another room, which in turn flies a television camera over a lunar map, which is in another room.
Oh, and then you see the output of that camera here.
Yes.
So that as you move it looks like you're
Fly the
landing.
camera.
Is it very realistic?
It's realistic, yes. It's a 6th degree of freedom simulation.
The first landing of this LEM on the Moon will certainly be one of the brightest chapters in the relatively short history of manned spaceflight. Leonardo da Vinci, who visualized man's flight 500 years ago, experienced the same fever when he wrote, "For once you have tasted flight, you will walk the earth with your eyes turned skyward. For there you have been, and there you long to return." This is John Fitch, MIT science reporter.
Jim Van Allen tell us what space is. Most of us have been brought up in the tradition that space was a vacuum, a place where there was nothing. Well, we've got to redo our thinking about that, haven't we, Jim?
Well, I should certainly say so. It's a very common term, the cold vacuum of outer space, as though that were the place where there was absolutely nothing. Now, the more we go out and look there, the more we investigate the conditions in outer space, the more we realize how vastly false that is. And there's probably nature's most interesting natural laboratory on an immense scale. And all the atomic processes, molecular processes, the vast variety of radiations in outer space, I think will be a major field of human endeavor during the next century. It's far from being empty.
Well, what is out there, Jim?
Well, in the first place, of course, we've known for a long time that the radiations from the sun are streaming through outer space, from the sun to the earth. We know that starlight comes through outer space, and all of these things, of course, have been known since the beginnings of astronomy, perhaps the beginnings of human observation of the heavens in the most primitive sense, although perhaps not understood on quite the same level that they are now. But now, in the last few years, we find that the region around the Earth, what we might generally call interplanetary space, the region among and between the planets, is literally filled with particles, protons, neutrons, electrons, all of the particles probably that we know in the laboratory. And they're streaming around with high velocities and high energies. In addition to that, there are many traces of residual magnetic fields associated with these clouds of gas and clouds of particles. In fact, I think Sidney Chapman's view that the Earth is really within the sun's atmosphere is a very illuminating way to look at it, and is really right.
Where do most of these particles come from? Do we know that yet?
Well, I think the sun is far and away the most important source of the particles flying around in outer space. Of course, there are cosmic rays, and they doubtless come not only from the sun, and in a occasional great burst from the sun, but primarily from other stars.
It seems to me that in the public view of space, there's been a great deal of overemphasis on manned space flight. And to myself, some years ago, I felt that man was a fairly useless thing in space, except as an experimental animal, or if he ultimately landed somewhere. What is your view on this?
Well, I tend to share that view. Because having a man go to another planet is a vastly interesting human enterprise, and there's no doubt about that. And I think in due time that certainly should be done and will be immensely interesting to the human race. I personally feel we're pushing the matter rather prematurely. I think it's like Scott going to the South Pole with donkeys or mules or ponies, I believe it was. That's right, ponies. Compared to the method by which we attack the Antarctic at the present time. So I think we're at the present stage, we're trying to go to the moon on a pony rather than waiting for an icebreaker, let's say. And meanwhile, I personally feel that a man is an immense nuisance in trying to do any sort of scientific measurements in the present scale of things, and we can do vastly better with electronic instruments. Well, I think we're in the era of the scientific exploration of space now, and I feel that's where the emphasis should properly lie, and making civil and commercial applications, let us say, as rapidly as the technology permits. Now, insofar as putting a man in space, I'm all for that in the long term, but I think it has received very much too great an emphasis in the present era.
So far as I'm concerned, this is in the realm of science fiction. But
and the point is, to get back to manned space flight, man is a very difficult thing to sterilize. You can't boil him at 140 degrees centigrade, whereas instruments you can.
Wouldn't be bad if we could, some of them, but we can't be selective about that.
Wait a minute, this isn't the china we picked out.
I know. After you left the store, I chose different ones.
Why?
Well, no offense, honey, but your taste is a little feminine for me.
Oh, suddenly flowers are feminine?
Hey, everybody! Happy Thanksgiving!
Hey, happy Thanksgiving, Thieves.
Hey, what's going on, Joe?
I need a good lie.
Oh, okay. How about the whole man walking on the moon thing, you know? You can see the strings, people.
Has speculated on the meaning of this first landing on another body in space. Would each of you give us your estimate of what is the meaning of this to all of us?
You want to try that? After you.
Well, I believe that
what this country set out to do was something that was going to be done sooner or later, whether we set a specific goal or not. I believe that from the early space flights we demonstrated a potential to carry out this type of a mission, and again it was a question of time until this would be accomplished. I think the relative ease with which we were able to carry out our mission, which of course came after a very efficient and a logical sequence of flights, I think that this demonstrated that we were certainly on the right track when we took this commitment to go to the moon. I think that what this means is that many other problems perhaps can be solved in the same way by taking a commitment to solve them in a long time fashion. I think that we were timely in accepting this mission of going to the moon. It might be timely at this point to think in many other areas of other missions that could be accomplished.
Well, everybody looking at me? Well, to me, there are near and far-term aspects to it. On the near term, I think it's a technical triumph for this country to have said what it was going to do a number of years ago, then by golly do it, just like we said we were going to do it. Not just perhaps purely technical, but also a triumph for the nation's overall determination, will, economy, attention to detail, and 1,001 other factors that went into it. That's short term. I think long term, we find for the first time that man has the flexibility or the option of either walking this planet or some other planet, be it the moon or Mars or I don't know where. And I'm poorly equipped to evaluate where that may lead us to.
I just see it as a beginning, not just this flight, but in this program, which has really been a very short piece of human history, an instant in history, the entire program. It's a beginning of a new age.